Hi, welcome to the Financial IQ Podcast. I'm Adam Jones, Senior Advisor at Keeler Thomas Management. Today we're going to talk about Social Security. Now, it used to be that maybe your parents didn't have to really worry about Social Security, meaning they just kind of applied for it at 65 or 62 and just took it and didn't give it really much thought. Today, most people need to rely on their Social Security income to make their retirement plan work. So it's very common for us to say the Social Security decision that you make is one of the most important decisions when it comes to your retirement planning. So we're going to talk about the ins and outs of Social Security, give you some tips on how you can maximize your benefit and some common strategies and also some pitfalls to avoid. Some people minimize the value of Social Security, thinking, well, maybe it won't be there, or maybe it's not going to be very much to me. And they don't really understand how the benefit works and how it can really value them. And when we're talking about spouses, there's an opportunity to really increase your income and make some good decisions that can really set you up for retirement. The nice thing about Social Security is you can't outlive it. Okay, it has a longevity protection. It also has inflation protection. There's something called cost of living adjustments, or COLAs, that help your Social Security check keep up with rising inflation. And we have seen that just in the last year. We had one of the highest raises due to cost of living increases in Social Security benefits. There's been years when it's been very low and years when it's been very high, but overall it tends to average, it's averaged about 4% for the last 30 years or so. I think going forward, it would be a wise idea to average Social Security inflation at about 2%. That way we're not overstating what might be coming to you in the form of a Social Security check. All right, let's talk about how they calculate your Social Security benefit. The way they calculate it is they take your highest 35 years of income and they adjust it for what they call a monthly earnings. So if you don't have 35 years of work history, let's say you only have 30, then you might have 0 years that count towards your 35, which can bring down your average monthly earnings. So it's important that you keep track of what's being reported for Social Security purposes. So they used to send out those Social Security statements to everyone. They don't do that anymore, but you can access those online. And those Social Security statements show your work history, what you paid into the system. And sometimes there are errors in that reporting. So you want to make sure that it's accurate and that you're getting all that you're supposed to. So that's the first part of the calculation, is taking those 35 years, and then they apply it to a pretty complex formula to determine something called your PIA, which is your primary insurance amount, and that's the amount you get at your full retirement. We'll talk about that in a second. The actual calculation that they use, like I said, it's very complex. They use something called bend points, where the first number of dollars are multiplied by a certain percentage, and then the next portion. So it's tricky to figure out. There's lots of tools, though, to help you know what your benefit is. I just mentioned those Social Security statements that they send out. The best way to view those statements is to go online to ssa.gov. That's the Social Security Administration's website. And you can create a login, but be patient. It's a government website. They're going to ask for lots of information. They'll ask for things like, you had a loan with this bank in this year for what? And so you may need to dig up some information. But it's a secure website, and you'll be able to access your statement, and it'll show you on there what your projected benefits are at different ages. And that's really helpful in knowing for your planning for your Social Security decision. You can also use some of the calculators that are on the Social Security website to get an estimate of what your benefit might be. There's also other tools out there to help put a plan together for taking your Social Security benefits. So I mentioned your full retirement age. Sometimes it's referred to as your FRA. And depending on the year you were born will determine what your FRA, your full retirement age, is. If you were born between 1943 and 1954, your full retirement age is 66. If you happen to be born between 1955 and 1959, then you are in our weird, strange category because it's 66 and some months. It's 2 months for each of those years. So, for example, if you're born in 1955, your full retirement age is 66 and 2 months. And then 1956 would be 66 and 4 months, and so on, until you get to 1960. And for everyone born in 1960 or after, your full retirement age is 67. One of the proposals that they've made to help shore up Social Security would be to raise that full retirement age to something later, but they've said that would only affect the younger generation. So that could happen down the road where the full retirement age for people born after a certain year might be something higher than 67. That means people are paying into the system longer, and the trust fund that is Social Security would be shored up. As it stands right now, if they made no changes to Social Security, they would have to start cutting benefits in the year 2033. That number keeps getting moved up sooner and sooner. It used to be 2034, and now it's 2033, meaning the money that they're collecting from Social Security in a form of tax is not keeping up with the payments that they're making out for the benefits. Some of the other proposals would be to cap the cost of living adjustments at a certain rate, raise the wages at which they tax. There's lots of proposals. It's likely that they will get something accomplished, but it might take up until the last minute to do so. But for our baby boomer generation and older generations, they can plan on Social Security. They should account for it, and it's a big part of what your retirement planning will look like. Okay, so we've talked about your full retirement age, 66, somewhere between 66 and 67. How early can you apply for Social Security? The earliest you can apply is age 62. What happens if you apply early? Everyone should know this. The number one rule when we talk about Social Security is if you apply early, you're locking in a reduced benefit. Okay, so if your full retirement age is 66 and you apply at 62, you're going to get 75% of what your PIA or your primary insurance amount at your full retirement age is. All right. So some people say, hey, I'm 62, I'm eligible, might as well take it. And they will have either unknowingly or foolishly locked in a lower Social Security benefit. And there's only a few ways in which you can fix that if you've made that mistake. There is a rule that says if you repay what you got from Social Security within the first year, you can fill out a form and pay it back and act like nothing happened. Well, not too many people are eager to pay back a bunch of money to the Social Security Administration. So just be careful. If you're going to apply early, you should have a reason for doing that. I'm not here to say you shouldn't, because there are certainly cases when people can apply at 62 and it makes sense for their individual situation. All right, so every year that you wait, your Social Security benefit gets a little bit higher. And at your full retirement age, it's 100% of what your projected benefit would be. All right, so what happens if we go past our full retirement age? You start to earn something called delayed credits, okay? And in the example, if your full retirement age is 66, your delayed credits are 8% per year. Okay, so at 67, your benefit would be 108% of what it would have been at your full retirement age. So you can imagine if we leave it alone, it will get even larger. So people who are still working or they have other sources of income, it sometimes makes sense to delay taking your Social Security benefit because we know that that 8% is going to happen. We have a guarantee there. We don't have such guarantees in our investments. So sometimes it makes sense, depending on your situation, to delay taking your Social Security benefit. How long can you delay it? You can delay it up until age 70, and that's the latest at which you can take your Social Security benefit. If you wait till then and your full retirement age is 66, that means you'd get 132% of what your FRA benefit would be. And that can really add up. And if you have a spouse and you're both planning to delay, we've seen people that have a pretty sizable monthly Social Security check coming in. And it can mean a lot for their lifestyle in retirement and making their retirement plan work. So it's important to have a plan in place for when you're going to take Social Security and weigh the options of when am I going to retire, what sources of income am I going to have, and when does it make the most sense for me to apply for my Social Security benefit. We'll talk a minute about spousal benefits and other types of benefits that come from Social Security Administration. One of the other things to consider when you're taking your Social Security benefit is your lifestyle, your health status, your need for income, if you might still be working, or if you're going to have a spouse that you might leave behind. Let's go back to the example. If we take a Social Security benefit early, let's say at 62, we've locked in some lower amount, and if you're married and you pass away, within a few years, you leave behind something called a survivor benefit, and you have locked in a lower amount for your survivor. So if you have a spouse that you're concerned about, maybe there's an age gap, or maybe you have health issues, it might make sense for you to delay your benefit for the purpose of benefiting your surviving spouse. In the case of a survivor benefit, we don't want to confuse that with spousal benefits. We'll talk about those in just a second. The survivor benefit means there's been a death. Okay, someone has died. So let's say there's a couple, they're both collecting Social Security. The one spouse is getting $2,000 and the other spouse is getting $1,500, let's say, based on their own work history. So as a family, they're collecting $3,500 a month from Social Security. If the higher earner, the one bringing in $2,000 a month, were to pass away, the surviving spouse doesn't get to keep both benefits. They're no longer collecting $3,500 between the two of them. They get to keep the higher of the two benefits, which is the $2,000 in our example. So the surviving spouse would then continue on with $2,000. That's a $1,500 reduction in their that surviving spouse monthly income. So you want to make sure you have a plan in place for surviving spouses. In the case of a death or surviving spouse, the benefits can start as early as age 60 or earlier if you're disabled. So understanding these different benefits is important, and having a plan in place for you and your spouse is important. Okay, let's jump to the other side of the table, which is spousal benefits. Again, don't confuse the two. Survivor means there's been a death. Spousal means we're benefiting between the two of us. So the way a spousal benefit works is that a spouse is eligible for 50% of their higher working spouse's PIA at their full retirement age. Okay, so in the example, if one spouse is eligible for $2,000 based on their own work record, even if the other spouse did not work at all, they're eligible for a spousal benefit equal to 50%. So in our case, it'd be a $1,000 benefit that they could collect. One of the rules is, in order to collect your spousal benefit, your spouse, who you're collecting off of, has to have applied for their own benefit. There used to be some strategies available where you could file and suspend, but those are no longer available as an option. So you have to wait until your spouse has applied for their benefit before you can collect your own spousal benefit. There's actually strategies that you can use where you might start one benefit and switch to a spousal benefit, but it depends on the timing and the numbers. And remember, you wouldn't be able to collect a double dipping benefit. You can't get your own benefit and a spousal benefit. So it has to equal 50% of the higher workers' benefit at their full retirement age or their PIA. That's the amount they're working off of. So if one spouse decides to delay till 70, the other spouse wouldn't be able to collect a spousal benefit until that higher earning spouse has started their benefit at age 70. So make sure you understand the rules, the differences between spousal benefits, survivor benefits, and what's the best case scenario for you and how you can maximize your income. I get the question a lot, what happens if I'm still working and I apply for a Social Security benefit? There's something called the retirement earnings test. This is only applicable if you haven't reached your full retirement age. Okay, so if you're under your full retirement age, whether it's 66, somewhere between 66 and 67, and you're still working and you turn on a Social Security benefit, if you make too much money, they will reduce your Social Security benefit. Okay? It's for every $2 you make over the limit, they take $1 away from your benefit. So if you're making too much money, you may not even get a Social Security benefit at all, and you will have turned it on. Now, they make it up to you when you get to your full retirement age. They pay back what they've taken out. So it's not a total loss, but you want to make sure if you are still working, you may not need to turn on a benefit because you could have this retirement earnings test come into play that could offset your benefit. Sometimes people will maybe lose a job at 62 and think, I need income, so I'm going to start taking my Social Security. And then they get a new job, and now they fall into this retirement earnings test where they're making too much and it will offset. And if they've gone more than a year, remember I said earlier, you can pay back the Social Security and make it like nothing happened. If you've gone more than a year, when you get to your full retirement age, you can call up Social Security and say, I'd like to suspend receiving my benefits so I can earn some delayed credits. So in that case, you can keep working, stop your benefits at full retirement age, let them build up until you're going to retire at a later age. Okay? There's lots of nuances, lots of different rules with Social Security. It can become confusing, so make sure you have a plan in place, you research the rules, and talk to a professional that can help you understand all these different things. When it comes to divorce, there are ex-spouse benefits as well, and the rules there are pretty tricky as well. The marriage has to have lasted at least 10 years for you to be able to collect an ex-spouse benefit off your former spouse, and your own benefit can't be more than 50% of what your ex-spouse benefit would be. Okay, so there's some rules with divorce situations that you want to pay attention to as well. And if you happen to get remarried during a certain period of time, then you are no longer eligible for your ex-spouse benefit. All right, so as you can see, there's lots of things going on with Social Security. It's important that you have a plan in place. It's only part of the puzzle for your overall retirement planning. It is one of the most important decisions that you'll make because you want to make sure you're turning on Social Security at the right time that makes your situation work. That means you're planning for what other income sources you have, whether that's from a retirement account, rental properties, or other income from a job or pension. And so you want to make sure you know when to turn on Social Security. If you have a spouse, you want to make sure you have planned for when both of you will take your benefits. You want to take into consideration your surviving spouse and what that means for when you might turn on your benefit. There's certain rules and ages at which you've got to know that you're doing the right thing. So do your homework. I would encourage everyone to go onto the website, ssa.gov, log in, and if you look for My Statement, that's what it's called on the website, it will show your Social Security statement. You'll want to verify that your work history looks correct, and they will show what your projected benefits are at different ages, usually at age 62, your full retirement age, and age 70. That way you can start to put pen to paper and have a plan together for how you can maximize your Social Security benefit. And remember, we have our own health concerns to think about. How long do we think we're going to live? Generally speaking, if you're going to live past age 81, it makes sense to delay your Social Security benefit. The reason I say that, that's what's called our break-even age, meaning if we're comparing taking Social Security at 62 or some later age, even to 70, once you get past age 81, you will have benefited by delaying your Social Security to a later age, because once you live longer, you're getting more from the Social Security Administration. So put a plan together, have some confidence about it, make sure that you're doing the right things, and again, this is a big decision, so make sure you are thinking through all the different scenarios. Thanks for joining us today on the Financial IQ Podcast. I'm Adam Jones. Have a wonderful day.